Ta-da.
This was fast. Yes, now I have the settings live on
Okay.
Facebook.
Okay. This was a test.
This was so fast. And
Martin,
now,
your name is different now. It says Raj Kumar, or is it just my?
So it does. How did that happen? That's interesting. Oh, it's because I used the link that he shared in the chat, so I came in as him.
So everybody, yes, everybody has Raj Kumar.
I'll go out and come back in case that causes
Okay,
a problem.
now go and put your original name.
We'll just change the name. Yeah.
I see 2 Kavitas. Only 1 Kavita. Okay. Kavita, Nisha is joining.
Nisha?
Nisha Hassan.
No.
I saw her name in the.
So maybe she's just joined, maybe.
okay, so welcome back everyone, and
14. Anybody in the waiting room? It will show up.
welcome back everyone. Now we can start the live stream, if finally live stream starts. Still preparing.
We request everybody to audio mute. Ambient. Yeah. Thank you.
I think we are now live in Facebook. Yes, we are. Fantastic. So welcome live viewers from Facebook, and welcome back all to the meeting. Without further ado, we're going to introduce our guest speaker today. Let me just share my screen here so that everybody can see the presentation. And Obi, it's really great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. What I can tell about Obi is that it's probably one of the most innovative Zoom hosts that I ever met. Is trying to break all the limits in terms of usage of virtual meetings with this particular platform. I have never met in person Obi Chatterjee, but I attended a birthday party, a New Year party, all with Zoom, and I know that Obi also hosts all kinds of ceremonies with Zoom, and it's amazing to have him here. Obi is the head of the learning technologies in the European Commission. So he's going to try to explain us what is exactly his work consists of. On its outside work, he loves digital filmmaking, and he has already several audiovisual productions, including 4 featured films. Of course, Obi also has a blog where he posts often about these productions and these private enterprises that he conducts. So without further ado, Obi, all yours. And I hope that my dear fellow guest here would like his presentation as much as I will.
Well, thank you very much, Paolo, for inviting me here today. Now, I'm going to begin a little bit with the help of Raj. So let me begin by asking all of you a question. I know that you've reserved some questions for me, but I thought I'd get in there first. So my question for you is that thinking back, and maybe Raj, you can share the poll on the screen now. Thinking back to the online events you have attended in the past 3 months, what is the ratio between those in which you became bored before the end and those which you wished could have gone on for longer? So the first option, 0 to 100, that's like none of the online events you joined were boring. Everything you wished that they could have gone on for longer. The second one, 25-75, so 25% of them you got bored before the end, 75% you wished could have gone on for longer, 50-50, 75-25, and 100 to 0, so that's every single online event, and you have my total sympathy, in which you became bored before the end. So I think on our side we can see here just over half of you have voted so far.
My submit button is grayed out, Obi. I can't submit.
Okay.
Me too.
So okay, so one person, every single. Okay, let me let's maybe we should share. Are you ready, everybody? So one person managed to have every single online event that you've attended which you wished you could have gone on for longer. So 36%, 25-75, and then more than half of you, 50-50. So so I think now we can maybe stop sharing. Thank you, Raj. So now now we know that at least some of you have not always had the best moments of your lives as a participant in an online event. And I'd like to suggest why I think that might be. And so let me just try to share my presentation now. So can you see my presentation?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. So I should begin by explaining that my job is about keeping up to date with the latest technological developments to see how they could be applied to support the learning of staff at the European Commission. There are around 33,000 of us, mainly in Brussels, but several thousand are in other places around the world. With the help of my team, I run the internal learning management system used by the EU institutions, agencies and other bodies. Together, that means around 50,000 staff. We're also responsible for developing or licensing the online learning content published on the platform. So why did I become interested in how to run online events better? Well, in 2018, due to a change in the IT infrastructure, we needed to replace the virtual classroom tool we had been using for some years. One of its main uses had been to run training webinars from Brussels for colleagues in the EU delegations around the world. So we started to look for an alternative virtual classroom tool and eventually identified Zoom as being the one which best met our technical and training requirements. Not long after that, a colleague suggested that I should join something called Visual Collab 2018, which was being run by David Gertin and Paolo Nunes de Abro, who's kindly invited me here. So David and Paolo were in a physical room in London, while several of us were, and I think Steve was also from that group as well, and the rest of us were connected from different parts of the world. You have an idea of the geographical spread from the image at the top of this slide here. Now, I found that experience fascinating. We could involve people from all over the world in a participatory discussion. And that's what encouraged me to explore the potential to use Zoom as a tool for participatory discussions. Now, of course, soon afterwards I asked Paolo when the next session would be, but it seemed to be some months away, if not at least another year. And so that prompted me to suggest that maybe I could start a series of discussions on Friday afternoons with colleagues and with some of those I had met during the Visual Collab 2018. Now, from my audiovisual background, it seemed to me that I should treat Zoom like a broadcast medium. So all the participants need to be kept engaged throughout, just like the audience of any live broadcast. And that led me to put together a running order in a spreadsheet which could be used to coordinate the online technical hosts and the host in the physical room that we had planned for that first Friday afternoon discussion. Well, the first session was okay, But the biggest problem was that no one came to the physical room. Everybody preferred to be online. So from then onwards, we focused on each Friday on refining the design for online participatory workshops. Now, for some of these discussions, such as one to identify what can and cannot be done in online meetings compared to physical meetings, Thomas Duval has been our graphic recorder. And so these illustrations that you see here are by him. And you'll see in our design template, which I'll show you in just a minute, that there are 5 minutes at the end for what we've called gallery. And that's where, if you have graphic recording during this type of session, the graphic recorder can then have 5 minutes to present what they have recorded during the session. So this, and I'm not sure if you can all see it on your screen, it's quite small, but I'll share a link with you afterwards so that you'll be able to look at it more closely. The first design template we'd prepared was then for a Knowledge Cafe workshop. So this was actually the design which had been used for part of the Visual Club 2018. And it's one which David Gertin knew very well because he had invented more or less the physical Knowledge Cafe. So he was very kind to join a lot of our Friday discussion club sessions. And this template has been through various revisions. What you're seeing on the screen is the latest kind of version of it, and we have what we've called a flow as the first sheet now. And so we put the activities, the number of minutes that each of these things into here, as well as the start time, and it kind of calculates by itself with the questions. That then feeds into a rather more complex running order, where you then see from what time to what time and for how long, which is based on the flow at the beginning, you need to, each of the different people need to be doing something. So you'll see that there are some roles here. On this, you'll see on the screen that there's an anchor. So the anchor is somebody who is like in today's, I think the anchor is Paolo, and Raj is the Zoom host. And also you might have other speakers, like today we have Vasi as well. And the other thing that we have not actively used much in this design template is the scope to have a host in the physical room. So there are a couple of hidden columns which show what they're supposed to be doing. But the main thing is that everybody should know at each stage in the session what's going on. Now, this is explained in this, I'm going to share the link a little bit later, but there are some explanatory notes that we've prepared for this design template and also others which we've put together for the other activities that we've been able to run since putting together this design template. So this led to a whole series of new online learning activities that I could offer to my colleagues. We had, well, of course, the Friday Discussion Club, which then gradually evolved into the Meaningful Conversation Club, because, first of all, why did it have to be Friday? And there was a huge discussion about whether it should be a discussion or a conversation, so I just sort of agreed to go for conversation then. And Designing Innovative Learning Solutions was an 8-part webinar series where we were explaining to colleagues who had to offer training either internally or externally, and we began by the basics of learning, including engaging the participants, and the 5 moments of learning need, and the 70-20-10 principle. And then we went into the workflow. How do you start from a learning activity and end up with, from a learning activity request and ending up with a learning activity? Course Design Peer Support Group, this was for this group of people just so that they could help each other, and also sharing experiences was to allow them to use storytelling to share their experiences of whatever experience they had, and also have some discussion about it. And then we also were using this format for expert discussions. So, for example, one of the things we've been looking at is co-creating policies with citizens. And so we had a discussion with many international experts on this type of co-creation of policies with citizens, who we invited to this type of session and helped us to define the learning solution that we are offering now for that. All sorts of other types of training and coaching, and I'll just end here to explain a little bit why I have this background and what we've been doing most recently is that we've set up a more or less weekly series called Together Ensemble, because we realized that we needed to maintain the human connection even if all of the staff were widely dispersed and working from home. And we've called that Together Ensemble, ensemble being the French for together. And so I'm just going to show you the title sequence for that. So that's a little introduction to what we've been doing, and I'm sorry I'm over time, Vasi.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh, well done. Fantastic. So online claps for you. So as a session host, I'm going to arrow some questions to Obi, and I also welcome the participants here. If you have any questions, please note down and just raise your hand, and then we will include you in the questioning session. We will go over about 10 to 15 minutes from now. Is it all right, Paul? Do you want to finish in 10 minutes? Yes, let's go for 10 minutes, considering that we lost some time. Okay, so Obi, I heard you about running training programs online. So could you please share in your experience, what kind of training suited the Zoom environment most, according to you?
Actually, we've been using two different formats. We've been using this format, for example, with breakout rooms. So this is the one we use particularly for participatory workshops. Okay. And that's something which has become, especially during this this period when everybody has been in lockdown, it's been extremely valuable to have that opportunity for people to connect with each other. Yeah. And in the first session that we ran immediately after, and it was after 1 week of lockdown, we ran a session just saying, let's just have a chat about how that first week was, and about 260 colleagues joined. And wow. We were kind of breaking all of our records in terms of the numbers of participants in our learning activities through this. There was another session we did using the webinar format of Zoom, where I mean, as part of our package from Zoom, they had given us a free bonus of a webinar license, which would allow up to 1,000 participants. And I was essentially thinking, well, we'll never have that number of participants. Of course, in lockdown, things are a little bit different. And we did indeed reach 1,000 people registering for a session that we organized about leadership during the crisis.
Okay.
Because suddenly all of the managers around our organization found themselves working from home without any way of knowing what on earth their teams were up to. So so this was something which attracted, I mean, we had 1,000 people who registered, but actually online was 760. But still, it's quite daunting in terms of numbers of participants. And we had another 2 sessions before Easter, and each of them attracted like 180 or 120 participants. And but it was really very useful for us to understand what people were really struggling with, and that's what led us to create this Together Ensemble series.
Thank you very much. 700. I mean, it's really unimaginable. Could you please share what challenges you had? Was it a broadcast mode about leadership, or how did you manage?
Well, that's the Zoom webinar format. So it's one
Yeah,
where you only see the people who were on the panel, and in that case,
yeah,
it
on
was
the left.
me and a couple of colleagues who were running the this particular session. But the
Okay,
260, this was really for this was in this workshop format, and that was one of the things when we were designing our design template. I wanted it to be something which would scale. So something where, because quite often in these participatory discussions, if people go into a breakout room and you ask somebody from each breakout room to come back, well, if you have 50 breakout rooms, which is the limit, then you have 50 people each giving 2 minutes of feedback. That's already 100 minutes, and you've almost hit 2 hours of feedback. So it's that's never going to work.
yeah,
So we needed something, and so we used something in parallel with Zoom, and we've been using Slido as a way of getting quick feedback. But I know that you're going to be using Zoom a bit later on, so we've also tried that.
thank you. Thank you very much. So could you please share, for the benefit of our audience here, a couple of significant achievements training over Zoom for you, for European Commission?
Well, actually, these particularly notable ones have been mainly during this session. Since the lockdown,
Yeah,
and it suddenly that was where the spotlight really fell on what we were doing, and it was just as well that. That we had the past year of practicing with Zoom to before all of this happened, so that we can do this type of session, and since we had practiced with everybody being online, fortunately everybody was online, and so we knew exactly how to handle that.
yeah. Any significant challenges in this experience of using?
Well, the first challenge was trying to explain to people who'd never heard of Zoom what they needed to do to connect to the platform. And other significant challenges, well, obviously, soon afterwards, we had all of the privacy and security concerns
Oh, yeah.
about Zoom, which came in as well. So I had to sort out all of that and reassure different people.
Okay.
But I think I saw here a question from.
I'm going to read them out now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you very much. So the first question from, thank you very much, participants. Connie, so how does Zoom compare to others like Google Hangouts and MS Teams?
I have to say it depends on what you want to use it for. We also have Microsoft Teams in our work, and it's fine as long as, I mean, my personal opinion is that it's fine so long as you don't want to do anything particularly sophisticated. Everybody's going to be on the screen at the same time, and one of the things which I'm struggling with a little bit is that when I'm invited to a Teams meeting, then the chat kind of remains forever, and this is something I'm not necessarily terribly used to, having had the experience with Zoom. But maybe if Teams is really primarily designed as a collaboration tool, and then I can understand that keeping the chat is important. So that's one thing. Google Hangout as well. I mean, all of these platforms have been evolving quite rapidly over this period. It's even Teams is supposed to be introducing breakout rooms soon. So we will see how that goes. But there's one of the reasons why Zoom scored quite highly for us. I mentioned at the beginning that one of the main uses we had before was that we had people in Brussels giving training to people in delegations around the world. And the delegations around the world, quite often, some of them have fairly low bandwidth. and Zoom so far seems to be the only one of the few platforms which seems to be capable of handling that.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is a question from Deborah. This question may be more of a suggestion for a future meeting. I'm interested in how they were going to do a blended virtual in-the-room session. There are very different dynamics when not everyone is connecting in the same way.
Yeah, so perhaps this is a good cue for me to share my link that I was promising in my presentation.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting that in the chat. And it's a basically you'll see that there are some explanatory notes that we've put together, and you'll see there that we included these different roles. I don't know, do you want me to share my screen or it's okay?
It's okay.
Yeah, so there's different roles. So the anchor I mentioned, Zoom host I also mentioned, speaker, person's framing the discussion. But then we also gave had other roles, which were breakout room facilitators, and that's where if you're online, then you identify these people to go into breakout rooms. And then the room host. This is where you have at least one physical room, or maybe more than one physical room. Then each of the hosts needs to be doing the same thing at the same time, and they need to know what they should be doing. So that's a little bit as a short answer to
Yeah. Yeah.
Deb's question.
Yeah.
But
So
that was really the objective of Visual Collab 2018 and all of the subsequent gatherings, was to precisely explore this this area of hybrid physical and online gatherings.
Okay, thank you very much. So quite a lot of questions. So first, my friend from Malaysia is asking, first you may have to wait for the answer because we're going to have an exercise around that. Nevertheless, I will read out the question. I hope you did not overhear me and Paul yesterday preparing the. What are some of the examples of ways to get and keep your audience engaged during a Zoom session?
Yes, so the you'll see in the design that we've given that there are a lot of steps, and it comes down to essentially what keeps our attention. And I mentioned the audiovisual parallel. Well, what keeps our attention? There was quite a lot of research done for, I'm sure that you'll have come across this children's television series Sesame Street. Well, before Sesame Street was launched, they did quite a lot of research about what keeps children's attention. Well, it's not just children, as it turns out, it's also adults. Because if you think about commercials and advertising, in a 30-second commercial, your attention is particularly taken by what happens in that. If you move away from the commercial, then you leave the commercial before the call to action at the end. Well, it's very similar in terms of our attention, that if you have a long period without any interaction, and so that's why the more interactive the session can be, the better. And also the more that you can have things changing every at most 4 minutes or so, then the more likely it is that you're going to be varying things sufficiently to keep the interest of the audience. I can go into more detail, but maybe there are
yeah. Sure. We're going to get there. So Rachel's question: what types of integrated platforms do you find to be easiest for participants to use? Mural versus Miro and versus Jamboard.
Wait, I'm just trying to look for this question. So okay, from Rachel, yes. I must say we are still experimenting and we are still exploring because there's there are a number of these platforms, and I've had a look at Mural and I've had a look at Miro. We've been using Jamboard a lot. It depends very much on the size of the group and also how you structure the design of the workshop, I think. With Jamboard, what we found is that, yes, we can send a link around, but there's a limit to you can have only up to well, I say only, but up to 50 people on the same Jamboard is about the limit.
Okay.
After that, it starts not working. But we're also looking at other things which are more artificial intelligence based, because you usually like to arrive at a conclusion or some kind of recommendations by the time you've actually got to the end of your session, so which everybody can actually agree to. But otherwise, you gather all of these outcomes from breakout rooms, and then somebody some days later has to prepare the report, and by that time everybody's forgotten, and of course not everybody has agreed. So there's another platform which we've been looking at, which is called Howspace. And there's another which Paolo kindly introduced us to as well, and there's another one which is called Concept Board. But each of these things have different attributes.
Thank you very much. So tonight we are going to have an experience with Jamboard in a few minutes. So Obi, this next question, I think Steve has a couple of questions. The first one, I'm interested in your broadcast format. So he says that engagement and keeping participants engaged in a broadcast mode is an oxymoron. So I wonder, what have you found works best to engage your participants in a broadcast mode?
Yeah, well, in a broadcast mode, one of the things which we do, I mean, we are now at the stage where all of our department heads are wanting to see or be seen by their somewhat large departments before everybody heads off for summer break. And so, for example, on Friday we have a session where we're expecting about 1,000 participants, and in that context, there's no way you can have a really direct interaction with everybody. But we did a poll at the beginning of my presentation, and that's something where you can engage with everybody. And it's a way in which you acknowledge that there are people outside in the audience there, and it's not just the 2 or 3 people that you see on the screen. The other thing that we do is that we keep the conversation that's going on between the department head and somebody who's kind of having a chat with them, not so that it's not simply a monologue, but more of a conversation, so that it becomes a bit less formal in this format.
Okay.
And then after that, we use the Q&A panel, which is available in that webinar format. And that allows people to upvote questions. And then we invite whoever has the most upvoted question to speak. So we bring them up as a panelist so that they can express their question in person, and that breaks up the monotony of having just the 1 or 2 people on the screen. So this is kind of one thing. And Steve also had this question about, do we have a production team channel? Yes, so we are using Signal. So Signal is it's an open source version of and secure and approved by cybersecurity people compared to things like WhatsApp and Messenger and so on. So with that, we create a back channel group for everybody who is involved in the hosting team, and that way we can coordinate with each other, and we make sure that everybody is aligned. And if we spot something, and particularly in broadcast mode, we put a couple of people in the audience, as it were, so that they get to see what the participants see.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for your suggestions about MS Team. Yeah, it's a clunky at the moment. I'm hopeful whatever Obi said, they're going to come out with some more efficient breakout rooms. Right now it isn't. It is really, really difficult to put people separately, ask them to come to the main room and all those things. So I think thanks for the participants. Obi, I have about this question about the Friday discussion club. What time was it scheduled on Fridays?
Yes.
What has been the surprises post-launch?
So on Fridays it was being scheduled between 3 and 4:30. So our sessions were 1.5 hours long, because that's what we felt was the longest that people's attention span is online. and we basically were doing that. We had people joining also from even as far west as Los Angeles for these sessions. So their time, I think that was like 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was really quite impressive that they were
Oh, amazing.
that they were keen to join. But indeed they did, and one of our, Paolo can confirm that one of our regular friends of the Friday Discussion Club was joining from Winnipeg, which is in the middle of North America, and in the central time zone there. And so for him, it was usually also quite challenging, but maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. But it was. But it was quite. It became a very nice way of ending the week on an
Yeah.
inspiring theme. We first of all started with topics which were of general interest to everybody who was there, and then we found that this would really only attract the geeks who are interested in this type of facilitation stuff. And so then we started turning our attention to kind of major world topics like climate change, populism, and all these types of things, which then became quite fascinating because we were able to attract colleagues working on these policy areas. And then we started to hit numbers around about 80 and so on. So this helped us to test whether our design could scale as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I just have 2 more questions. So you said you changed over to Meaningful Conversations Club later on. So did you suspend the Friday meetings, or did you continue with that?
Well, they kind of changed. Well, nobody particularly liked the word discussion. Well, I didn't. I obviously didn't mind the word discussions because I had called it Friday Discussion Club, because for me they were discussions. But then various colleagues from we managed to, apart from Paolo and also Hector from the International Association of Facilitators, we also managed to attract people who were facilitators for the World Cafe community and also for the art of hosting community. So these are like the three biggest international communities of facilitators. So it was really an honor that everybody found it so interesting to be part of this session. And we created an unlisted group in LinkedIn where we were announcing the next event and what it was about and how to connect and things. So that got rebaptized as from the Friday Discussion Club to the Meaningful Conversation Club. But I have to admit, in the recent period, we haven't been able to be very active with that. But gradually, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to open up the Together Ensemble sessions to the Meaningful Conversations Club. Because that format is one where we have a webinar. So far it's been on a Thursday afternoon our time, and we record that, and then we usually get 3 guest speakers, getting more and more high profile as people find out what we're up to, and then we have participants who are then joining for the workshop, which is at this kind of traditional time now of between 3 and 4:30 Central European summertime, and we discuss the topic of that week. So we've been having various topics lately about life beyond the pandemic, and so this is where we're heading at the moment.
Thank you. Last question from me. In your observation after this meeting through technology, how it has impacted your teams in terms of cohesion, team cohesion, because there's no natural networking happening.
Yeah, I have to say that was one of the things we had to address fairly early on, not just for our team, but for everybody in the whole organization. And so that was also one of our very popular webinars, was Team Dynamics in a Crisis.
Yes.
And so, you don't have that physical connection. We've just, but you also at the same time, I mean, now after 3 months, everybody is suffering online meeting fatigue.
Yes.
And we are we're really, it's really a challenge to convince them that no, this is really going to be the best online meeting you've ever attended. So because it's like, oh no, it's another hour and a half. So you really need to, it really does need to be well designed to get people in there. And so the webinar format is 45 minutes, and we've still noticed a very sharp decline. For the webinars, we're getting like 120 colleagues joining more or less regularly each week. Or it's not the same people, but that's roughly the numbers we're getting. And by the time we get to the workshop, that's drawn down to about 40 or 30. And which is a shame, because but actually to have a good discussion, that's not a bad number.
Yeah.
So maybe it works out this way, and then we take the recommendations from those workshops and we send them to our senior management, because they're on our policy topic areas, then they can actually perhaps use them as input for their policy recommendations.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Paul, but before that, one last question from Fern. And I don't want to miss out on participant question. They are really important. They're taking time to come here. So the question from Fern to you is, have you tried Storms or Lean Coffee Table?
I have to say I haven't, so I'd be curious to know what they are. We've used various things. We've also used a virtual tablecloth in the form of a Google Doc. But currently there are lots of different options which are available. We happen to have Slido as a corporate tool from before, which is used mainly for conferences and physical conferences for engaging with the audiences, and so that's what we've been using in parallel with Zoom. But ideally, you don't want to go out of, especially with 760 participants, you don't want to go out of the platform. So we use, and that's the other reason for using the Zoom webinar format for this size of session. It's then we can use the Q&A panel, and we can use the features and the polling which are built into there.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over the forum back to Paul. Paul, I hope you enjoyed the discussions.
So much. So great discussion, and in Facebook we are increasing our viewers by the minute as the discussion goes into the questions, and definitely this is something that will endure in IAF Facebook page, so people can revisit this interesting conversation we're having. And thank you so much, everybody, for the questions that you asked, and Narcy did the excellent job here, Obi. So I understand, Obi, we're going to stay until the end, so let's share some Zoom tricks together, if you will. Let me go back to the presentation as I left it here. Now it's up to a panel session with our Zoom druids, IAF Zoom druids on board. And unfortunately, Raj, you have bad news to share, right?
Yes, Paul. In fact, we had interest from many people, and we selected 6, and we see one of our Zoom droids is here. Other people are probably managing other fires out there.
that's for sure. But anyway, I like to say thank you so much for Rina. He's the only one who is here with us. And Rina is going to please start your video. Rina, you're going to be interviewed now. And on your experience organizing the IAF Festival with Zoom. And then we'll do a quick round on Jamboard for sharing a little bit more tips. Rina, if you're still with us.
Is Nisha here?
So light up your video and let's hear from you on your experience with the IAF Online Facilitation Summer Festival. Tell us about it.
Okay, will I be able to share screen so that I show some slides?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, just a minute. Sorry, my cousin was in the room, so I had to kick her out.
Not a problem. And Rina is interrupting her vacations to be with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Amazing.
Thank you too. Do you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So Actually, I wanted to show you some of my tips that I had from the Zoom festival that we had. So, sorry, okay. I have been in IAF since 2011. We first had a conference in Istanbul, and it was in 2011. And then we had the facilitation training camp and exploring the power of facilitation this year, last year, sorry. Those were all on-place events, but this year, after the COVID, I have had two big major online events with IAF. The first one was MF Facilitation Talks, which we did with Celeste, and it was lovely. We had 8 sessions, and I also had with my team from Middle East and the Balkans, the Online Facilitation Summer Festival. So I have some pros and cons of these online events that we have been hosting. And I wanted to share those as little tips. I'll just go quickly so that I don't take too much of your time. First, bringing people together, networking was the major point that I've seen. I've heard from most of the attendees that they were loving the opportunity to meet new people. So that they prefer workshops to webinars. They don't want to be there with their cameras off. They just don't want to listen. They want to participate. That was one of the questions I saw in the chat. You were asking how to engage people throughout the Zoom sessions. I think the first key thing to that, in my opinion, is to host workshops rather than webinars, because they want to be together. They want to be sharing their thoughts. They want to be seen. They want to be raising hands or clapping, congratulating, and they want to be involved in the process. And they prefer interactive sessions where there are some questions, or they're using the chat, or they're using their own voice to ask their own questions. And they prefer pen and paper workshops. That means they don't want to see slides all the time. They want to see the facilitator or the presenter behind the cam doing the stuff as if he or she were in a room doing a facilitation session. I think that's another key point, and that's what I'm focusing on with my future events in my own company, online future events, because I don't want to have presenters who show their presentations and do nothing else. Rather, I want to have presenters and facilitators which work interactively with their participants. And the breakout rooms, that's not my profession area, but I think it's a pro because networking is the key point of this, getting people engaged and getting people there. So breakout rooms are always a good pro for the Zoom sessions. The cons are more important to me because I have faced some difficulties during my past events, for IAF especially. You know, IAF is using one main account, and that might happen with your own company as well. If you're having one account and several people using the same account, make sure that once you have a session, only one person logs in as the host and no one else who uses the same account logs in during the session, because if they do, you might lose people. Zoom does some odd stuff. For example, once we were in a talk, facilitation talk, and we sent our participants to breakout rooms, but then someone else from the IAF logged in with the IAF account, and then we lost all of our participants, and it took us 5 to 10 minutes to get all those people back to find where they were, who was the host, and it was a big confusion. So I could warn you about that. That's a big point. And I think sharing your meeting ID alongside your Zoom link is really important, because sometimes Zoom links might not work at the last minute, and then you might be under a bombing of many mails, people asking that they can't log in, how to log in. So make sure once you're reminding your Zoom session, please put your meeting ID as well, because meeting ID works 100%. That's what I've experienced. And having a list of your participants on Google Sheets or somewhere else could help you, because if you need to mail them at the last minute, then it will be a great help to you. And I would just recommend you not to send early reminders, because if you remind your participants really early, they might happen to forget what's happening and when it's happening. So if you remind it just like half an hour or 1 hour ago before, they will definitely see it, and they will definitely attend. Most people will attend. And sending calendar invitations is really important. This is what I've experienced with Paulo. Thanks for this, Paulo, because you have given me the idea about this. We didn't do this in the summer festival, and people forgot about the event. Just a minute. Bir susar mısınız? Kafam çok karışıyor. Sorry. If you don't send the calendar invitations, people don't have it on their phones or on their laptops, and they don't get any reminders. And when they don't get reminders, they might happen to forget it again. And make sure you don't have any left out people in the breakout rooms. That was a big thing that we have faced. Once you think that you have sent all the people into breakout rooms, some might not be in, some might not have received the invitation to the breakout room, and they feel left out. They feel so bad about this. So there is this pop-up about the breakout rooms, and if you just check it all the time and see there's just only one person in a room, you can just move that person into a crowded room, more crowded room where there are other people, and that's a good way. And taking good care of the main room is also well, because if there are people that are having some technical issues and can't join in the breakout rooms, they will be left in the main room, and you can use the main room as another breakout room where people can network and discuss about your questions or their own ideas. And that was all. I just wanted to do this quickly. If you have any questions, I'll happily answer those. And I have a list of these useful tools. I can leave it in for some couple of seconds, so if you want to take notes of those. They're really useful ones. I have used most of them, and they help you have engaging and nice sessions where people feel included and you see that there is a lot of interaction in. So thanks for letting me talk.
Really a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really a pleasure. So it's interesting, Narcy. We can have here lots of subjects to do further level up sessions like engagement tools.
Of course.
I'm just thinking about a level up session on engagement tools. Well, Raj, so too bad that we only have Rina with us. So what are we going to do with our panel session? I say it's good news because we are running out of time. So Rina, thank you so much for you to be able to present these wonderful tips. Oh, now I see you finally.
Yes.
And have you in the spotlight. Cool. So group, I have to ask a question to the 17 participants who are here with us, because we have thought about doing something with more time and more discussions and more, it will be a world cafe, right? So right now, perhaps we don't have enough time to go in depth on even one round, because I understand from my own experience as a participant, when we have little time to discuss, it's frustrating. So what I propose you to do is to do a little bit of what we also plan to do is the virtual gallery walk. So let's take now 5 or 6, 7 minutes before the end. And Raj, if you want to start the Jamboard, please visit the gallery and try to add any tip, any thoughts you have on the subjects, right? So we'll do individual gallery walk. And then after 5, 7 minutes max, we'll come back for harvesting, and then we'll close the session on time. Is that okay?
Yep.
Cool. So on the chat now, I think Raj is putting the Jamboard session. So please visit the gallery, do the gallery walk on the subjects you have. If you feel some themes that you don't want to contribute, that's not a problem. If you want to contribute more than one tip on another, please do so. So let's be back in 5 minutes and check how the time is for everyone. Okay?
Paul, that's a very good improvisation on your part. To quickly go on. That's a good one.
We have to adapt. What is important is take advantage of this group, because we have here a powerful group, a group of meeting druids. So please, meeting druids, leave us your tips here, and let's share, let's fill Jamboard with tips and useful comments. Okay? So back in 5 minutes. So for the participants who are watching us live on Facebook, we are now doing a breakout session. Well, not actually a breakout session, it's a virtual tour and on Jamboard. And if you bear with me for just another 4 minutes, we'll be back with some interesting conclusions for you. So please stay with us. We'll be back very shortly.
Also, when will be a good time to share some of the Jamboard slides on the main room?
Whenever you like, because we are having a Facebook participants. So whenever you like, we can start sharing.
Yes, so it will.
I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Yes. Yes. But why is that Google Chrome? Okay, that is the Google Chrome. Okay, this is the Google Chrome. And then share.
Do you want me to share the Jamboard myself?
Yes, yes, my system doesn't have the rights for some reason.
I'll share the Jamboard here, no problem.
Yep.
So this is what we're having so far. Very interesting tips. I'm amazed with the discovery that we're doing here and the how to maximize breakout room experience. This is one of the tips. How to host open space sessions, also with some decent number of tips here. And all these, needless to be said, is going to be shared with everybody after this session. We're going to produce like a recommendation book for them with some good facilitation, virtual facilitation tips for using Zoom. And thank you so much for your contribution here. I think it's going to be valuable. Narcy, do you also believe that good virtual facilitation can have a powerful impact on the post-COVID era?
Of course, yes. We are already there, you know, and that's anyway going to be the way forward. I feel, in my experience, this kind of Zoom meetings are getting more and more efficient. And you know, people are very, very happy that you know, the teams are able to meet using technology. Otherwise, they were lost and lonely. So now they are very, very happy. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We're improving. And these kind of sessions that IAF is organizing is only making you know, people more familiar with what is the potential of Zoom and other platforms as we go.
Exactly. And Obi, what are your comments on the fact that Zoom, without these digital add-ons, without these digital tools, would be as useful as it is?
When you say without these digital add-ons?
I mean, would you be able to host the same high-quality engagement meetings with Zoom only? Meaning without digital add-ons like you normally use Slido or other tools?
That depends, I think, because but usually you do need some kind of engagement tool. Whether it's within, I think there was a question about have we tried using the whiteboard in Zoom? We did, but especially with large numbers of people, that seemed not to be very practical, because you would, if you start writing in text and typing, then the letters come up very big on the whiteboard, and then there wouldn't be enough room for everybody to put something there. Jamboard obviously does much better at that. So it's always difficult for one tool to be the one which can handle everything. But if you're doing a workshop, then perhaps you have the time to explain how to use it. I mean, I've seen everybody's happily using Jamboard here because we all know how to use it. But in sessions we've run with Jamboard, we had to go back to basics and explain what this is and how to write sticky note and all of that. So there's difficult things, and you'll see in the brainstorming design template, I think David had a question there about whether we've used MindMeister. We did. Well, one time we explained how to use MindMeister. It was a mess by the end of the breakout session. So then after that, we even assigning one person in each group to be responsible for MindMeister. But what we then found is that it's safer if a couple of us, like you would do in a physical session, a couple of us are gathering all the different ideas and just noting them down on the MindMeister. That worked much better. But I think without these external tools at the moment, yeah, it does work in the broadcast session, where between the Q&A panel with the upvoting and the chat, and also the live polling, there's enough options, I think, to do without leaving the Zoom. And I think especially because Zoom webinars are used for large numbers of participants, open to about like 50,000 potentially, then you probably don't want them to all be launching off into a different platform, especially if they're joining from a mobile device. So we've had to think about, you know, all of these types of things as well, that you might lose them very easily, and especially if they're not very comfortable with digital tools.
Absolutely. So I think it's probably the good moment in time to share here the short video that our Muji prepared from the global office. If you bear with me with this is just some information. Most of you are already familiar with this information, but before we go, I have these 2-minute videos that I would like to share with you, and bear with me for just 2 minutes.
Well, is there an audio for this?
Yeah, you're not listening the audio?
No.
There's no audio? Okay, sorry about that.
Just release the computer audio.
I'll share with the computer audio, yes. Okay.
Around that. Thank you, Paul and Rajkumar and Narsi for organizing this webinar. And just going to quickly run you through this. So first thing we have is what is available. So we have access to 2 Zoom host accounts, which gives us access to 2 schedules in Zoom for recording meeting and webinars. The recordings, which of course can be later shared online or with team members who can access. This is available to both IAF board members, regional leadership teams, special projects and event teams, as well as chapters. And what can it be used for? Basically, board meetings, team meetings, and webinars such as this one. And of course, anything in between that comes up, we work with that as needed. What the process for organizing these is basically that you contact us at the office with the date and time for the Zoom meeting or webinar. We ask that for webinars, we send information 3 to 4 weeks before the webinar. This gives us time to make sure the information is up correctly and in time for people to view it and sign up. So we have good numbers in the webinars that show up on the website and for your chapter webinars as well. For meetings, I would like that the meeting. This information is sent to us at least 5 days before the schedule time. This just gives us the time to make sure we can get this information back to you in time to share with your team members. For meetings, once they're scheduled, we will share the details and the meeting link and the calendar invite with the organizer, and that can then be shared with the rest of the team so they have it ahead of time before the meeting starts. For webinars, there would probably be a banner or a graphic to go with it. If that is there, please send it to us before, along with the rest of the webinar information, so we have that up on the website as soon as possible. Once webinars are published on the website, we add them to a list of content added on social media and our upcoming monthly update based on the dates. And finally, any questions and inquiries, feel free to contact me at the office at iaf-world.org, and I would be happy to help you. Thank you and have a great day.
Amazing. So this is puts a hand on our live transmission also. We'll keep the room open for the ones joining us here to do a soft ending and perhaps a little bit of harvesting on the conclusions we have done here. Thank you very much for attending, and it's really, really a pleasure to have with me Obi Chatterjee and my co-hosts Narsi and Raj for helping me to make this transmission. I think it's the first time we are doing this in the IAF. Let's make it happen. Bye, everybody.
At the group map feedback form
for the internal team, yeah. If you can launch it on the chat, please.
Yes. I've just put the link on chat. Would you want to check if it's working?
Yes. And Raj, I think if you'd be so kind as host to stop the live transmission on Facebook. Or make me host and I'll do it.
How do I do that? Stop live stream. Shall I do that?
Yeah, please. Okay. Well done, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if you can please put your comments on the group map, that will be a very useful feedback for all of us. And Obi, Irina, you did well as our guest speakers.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. That was very interesting as well to hear. And I'd be interested in Irina's presentation if you have it.
I think participants also gracefully contributed to quite a lot of questions to Obi.
Yeah, I can put my email address here, so if you contact me from there, I can share it with you.
Great, thank you.
Rina did an incredible job with the online facilitation festival. It was supposed to be a face-to-face meeting in Turkey, right, Rina?
Yeah.
And then suddenly, all of a sudden, wow, let's go online. And she was really brave.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, anyone wants to share some thoughts, final thoughts? David Bishop, thanks for being here. Please turn up.
No, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have an Irish guy here.
Yes, no, and I mean,
with an Irish flag, I would say. With an English.
My grandmother was English, so I'm 25% British and 100% Irish. Okay.
You know, it's my favorite country in the world after my adopted country, Spain. It's Ireland.
Ah, good.
Oh, it's Happy Canada Day. Very good.
If Rina's still here, maybe I can ask you a question about your presentation.
Okay.
So, you mentioned that people prefer workshops to webinars.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things that that we've been identifying in our, and maybe it's just the weird people that we have in our sessions, but they seem to be much more comfortable sitting back listening to a webinar than actually taking part actively in a workshop. And even sharing their video seems to be a challenge getting people to do that. So I don't know, it was slightly the opposite experience to what you were describing.
Yeah, but maybe it might be, well, all my experiences have been in facilitation. And you know, facilitation is always interactive. When you're in the room with your facilitator, you'll always discuss with the group. And it always works like that. So whenever we had some facilitation talks where we only had presentations, where we had our speakers speak, and David was in most of them, I think, so he has a great idea about those. When the speaker was in the front view and he or she was only speaking, then we saw that some participants were bored and they tended to leave. But when we had some paper and pen workshops where the facilitator didn't show any slides, but had some post-its behind him or her and showed those slides, then asked the participants to do stuff together with him or her, it always worked better and we didn't lose any participants. That's my experience, but that's only for facilitation. So if the topic is different, that might be totally different. But if it's facilitation or training, then it works interactively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So David wants to ask something. He raised a hand.
David,
Yes.
turn your camera, please.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about the pen and paper facilitation workshop. I think it's something that we should explore because it's one of my fears almost when doing facilitation is trying to get everybody on board as regards the tool. And I think once you get past the 50 age group, 60, don't even try. Voila. I think it'll take about 6 sessions for them to get it correct, and that's fine. And there's also another trap, I believe, is that the more familiar we become with the tool, we tend to think our participants are evolving at the same pace. Voila. That's another observation.
Very important observation. Thank you so much, David.
Yes,
So true.
I have one more observation, if I can, for the IAF. Since I was a child, I'm a magician. Okay, it's magic tricks, not kind of strange magic, but just a performing magician. I have a friend in Florida who performs on Zoom for hundreds of people every evening. Doesn't use any technology other than obviously cameras, and has been doing this for a long time. He's often on television. I can ask him to participate in an IAF session about standing up in an IAF, in a Zoom session. Well, that's just because everybody sits down, everybody stays in front of their camera, but we don't actually see people standing up and pointing at boards and things like that. It's just an idea that he could probably share with us.
It's a good idea, David, and maybe in a few weeks' time, after Rina is back, we might have some good news for you, because we are just thinking about doing a workshop on standing facilitation and video conferencing.
Yes.
There's a colleague in Russia. It's actually a group of colleagues in Russia that are really proficient in the use of graphical tools, and it's a combination, because of course you can stand up and use the graphic drawing in a flip chart, but also if you have like an iPad where you can draw there and people can see the drawings, that even makes more engaging the session.
Yeah, in fact, that's the technique which is used by one of our former colleagues. Paolo might remember her, Ursula. She's using boards and sort of, so the computer is here, she's standing, and there's a board behind her, and she's doing it this way. So she's in Bregenz in Austria.
What's her name again, Obi?
Sorry?
What's her name again, did you say?
Ursula, wait, I've just found her website actually. Ursula Hilbrand. I'll just put the link to her website in the chat.
And also, Obi, you didn't mention, or at least you didn't stress that much, the graphic. You mentioned, of course, in your presentation, the graphic facilitator you have with you, Thomas. It's amazing. The sense of humor he captures on the sessions.
Yes, no, exactly. So he actually he doesn't do that formally in my team. He's part of our support team for the learning management system. But as it happens, he has this talent. He also composed the music for the stuff
really?
that we did. Yes.
For the ensemble, wow, amazing.
So
can you put that video again? Okay, so we can.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Wait. Let me just try again.
I really. So that will be the intro video for the sessions you're going to start, right?
Yeah, that's it. So once everybody is in, we have all of the speakers in place. Then we set everything kind of recording, and then we launch this. directly into welcoming people into this next edition of the Together Ensemble, etc.
It's amazing. Amazing. We have to have one of those for our sessions, Narsin, Raj.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that we are also, it was actually an idea from one of the other teams that I've been working with, where they added music at the beginning and at the end of their webinar. So that as people were arriving, then they had music, and actually that's how they were testing whether the audio connection was working. So there was a thing on their slide which says, if you can't hear music, then get in touch with us via the write to the panelists in the chat. And so the technical people were there, and they were getting the helping them out that way. But it's it's quite fascinating dealing with large numbers of participants, because that was yesterday we were 400 participants and 9 people had audio problems or couldn't hear the audio from the session. So but eventually they all managed to get there.
So Obi, your video streamed so well. Is it something to do with your production or the bandwidth now with all of us?
Say again.
No, your video was streaming so well, I mean, without any hitch. So is it to do with the production, the way you made it, or with the bandwidth that we are all expecting?
It's perhaps a combination of things, because it's at 720, which is the usual. It's about the largest that you can. The size of the image, 1280 by 720. It's about the largest that you should have on a streaming platform. And it's also exported in a way specifically for streaming. And what it also helps that I have a fairly powerful computer here, which can manage to handle Zoom plus playing videos through the system. But you need a fairly strong video processor to make it work smoothly.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. Okay, so Steve Bather, you still here with us? Steve is probably on mute and multitasking, as I know him well. He's a busy person.
Teenagers have arrived.
Or he's probably on a call.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so it's really almost 15 minutes after our end time. I know that you must probably be tired now. It's what's the time in India now, Narsin, Raj? 8:30?
It's 8:15.
8:15, so dinner time for you. How about we close this meeting?
Yes.
Yep. On a very, very happy note and very energized. The first attempt went off very well.
First Facebook Live attempt in the IAF. Well done, guys. Well done, everybody. Thank you so much.
And a big thanks to...
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Obi, thanks a lot, Obi.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Obi.
Thanks very much for the invitation.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Paul and Raj, a few minutes debrief. Would you like to stay?
Yeah, sure. Let's debrief.
Just 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's do that. I think, wow, this was like the start. The fact that we didn't try this account and the Facebook was.
Yeah. So, how many participants were there viewing the Facebook? Any idea?
Yes, we can check that right now. Let me just.
Right, the recording is going on.
We can stop the recording. Paul, you're the host, and you can stop.
I'm the host now. I stopped the recording. Yeah.